All right, all right. I really appreciate you tuning in to this particular audio recording. Of course, what I'm going to be going over in this particular in this feature, I want to have a conversation with you about something that has been kind of on my on my study radar, of course. So what I've actually been coming in contact with is wanting to actually identify or be able to make sense of whatever it is my experience is. Now, I don't necessarily see or hear a lot of people actually communicating about their experiences. There's a lot of emotional refreshments that exist, but I want to kind of talk to you about something. Now, some of you might be familiar with a show that used to come on called The Brady Bunch. Now, it was a bunch of they had the thin yellow, the stuff that the book of Leviticus says is unclean and everything. But they actually had them on a particular board, and it was like multiple squares, and then there was a member of that particular bunch in individually in a square, right? So then it was their way of kind of showing you that family. What's very, very interesting is when you're on this path of attainment, of course, I actually had a couple of experiences where I had a Brady Bunch style setup that was actually shown to me. The first experience, it was just a bunch of women, right? They were all moving around as if they were actually real, right? And it was like done in a way to see which one I would actually look at. Now, there was several rows, and each one was doing and moving in a different kind of way. So I was really just trying to take it in because the board was so close to my visual perspective, of course. So then what I actually noticed is that in my environment after that, I would actually come in contact with multiple different types of beings, whether they be astral looking or I would actually be out in certain places and I could actually see that whatever it was that was in front of me, I could tell that they were actually trying to do what they thought was favorable things for me, if you get what I'm trying to explain. So then I related that to maybe that board where it was trying to give me an experience, primarily because of some knowledge that I had about various different operations that are taking place. So it looked like it was like saying, okay, well, let's see if we can do something like this, because at that particular time and continually now, of course, I was not participating in like that lower birth style behavior, right? So then obviously I've been traveling and all that and trying to make sense of my path of attainment. But then I've actually have come in contact with another board style presentation, but this time was different. It was multiple different characters like before. It wasn't as many, but it looked like each character was hostile in some kind of way, which was very, very interesting. Now I'm in a completely, with this experience, in a completely different time frame and everything. So it was just interesting. And then when I was pulling the board back to kind of like look at both of those situations, then I was able to kind of like pinpoint certain situations. Like in the second, part of that presentation, of course, I was able to translate that to an experience when I was out at a restaurant and I was sitting there, and me and someone who was helping me, with a build project, and there was this lady who looked similar to like the Brady Bunch, and she came in, she kind of looked at me, gave me like a constipated kind of look. The guy who I was with actually spoke to her, but that's the reason why I was given the constipated look, because I could tell that they really didn't want to kind of smile toward me or anything like that. So then they sat down and then they started typing, of course. Now me and the guy, of course, we were having conversations and so forth. But then it looked like a couple of days later, of course, I was presented with a presentation, a visual image of a file that looked like code, right? So if anyone is actually familiar with like a JSON file, a .json file, or any of these types of files, of course, where you can just input a bunch of data, similar to like JavaScript, right? So, and then it gets read by something else. So when I was actually trying to focus in on the words, I saw a lot of things that was written in there. It had hash. Some things had like a long hash, or like if you're familiar with browsers, when you're going from tab to tab in a browser, depending on whichever one you use. I'm talking about like an internet browser. Typically, it has a session cache. There's a cache that's associated with each one of those sessions that you create, right? So then when I was looking at that file, I noticed that there was a session that was associated to each one of those, whether it be like a login. I saw like some sites that were on there that are associated with having a login, and it looked like there was a hash or some form of a session that was embedded there, which means that if that session is what I think it is, that means that whatever was inputted in has the ability to log into whatever it wants to by using that session, if you get what I'm saying. So then I started thinking about everything, and then obviously I did a video when I was talking about how I had an experience when I was coming into the area that's set up for work, and how there was like a lady saying he's not in here, and then there was a guy saying don't worry, he'll teach you, right? So the way that I heard this is similar to how you hear a thought. So like, for example, if you were to go into a room and someone just started talking, but you can't actually see them, so to speak, then that's kind of like how I hear on a daily basis. Now, when I try to precept when that might have first started, I'm thinking it has something to do with seeking after something that wasn't necessarily wrapped up in materialism, right? So there comes a time in everyone's walk where you reach a position of saying, hey, you've tried all the ingredients, but then every time that you look for the end result of those ingredients, it doesn't come out according to those instructions, right? So then I started seeking after like identity and things of that nature. So that's when I started noticing a shift in my experience, in my outward experience, and in my vision experience. So then I started I'm connecting all of this stuff together, because I'm seeing now that once you reach a certain position in whatever it is that you're doing, then it becomes clearer that you're actually dealing with something that is kind of operating similar to an input-output type of setup. Similar to like how a brain operates, how you can condition yourself to do certain types of things. You can condition yourself to respond a certain type of way in this type of setting, or to respond a certain type of way in this type of setting. Or if you have a smell that presents itself and you don't necessarily like that smell based on whatever reason, then you have conditioned yourself to respond a certain type of way, if you get what I'm trying to explain. So it seems like it's operating similar to that. But what I'm actually seeing in a different way is that this is actually tied to needing various different connection points. Like in the dwelling place, I'll notice that if I change something around, then there's an influx of something that typically tries to present itself, because it's trying to build up those connections again. So it needs you to actually respond to it, or at the position I'm at, it's taking almost anything as a response. Like I've gotten to the point to where I would like literally stop talking, and then now it's trying to use whenever I'm speaking from within, or something along those lines. Or then it'll try to basically finish my thought, or start my thought, or finish my sentence, or complete, or something along those lines, trying to create these particular interactions, because it's very possible that these interactions instruments are producing some type of string, if you get what I'm saying. So similar to that static electrical type of globe that you might have seen, where if you put your hand on it, how all of the static lines seem to kind of try to follow wherever your hand glides on that globe. It's kind of something similar to that, because then what I'll see is that when I go to popular places, like whether it's to the sink or whether it's to the bathroom or whether it's sitting at the table or something along those lines, I'll have a high level of interruptions, whether it be vocal interruptions or whether it be something actually feeling like something is happening at the base of my spine. Like if I'm sitting on a table at the desk like I am now, while I'm even having this recording, I'm actually feeling something like shifting and moving and so forth, like it's either trying to interrupt me or find a position where I'm transitioning to try to take and use that moment to try to do something that is possibly not favorable. So when you read about these particular ascended masters or these particular ones who are talking about principalities and they're talking about the darkness of this world and all these various different types of things, I've always had the question of wondering, how could you have a 15-dimensional being, so to speak, that's able to fall? Do you get what I'm saying? Like something that was able to be taken down and so forth and so on. And then it makes me think about this situation, and then I precept that with the sentinel that you see in the movie Matrix, right? So then I've shared some information about this particular brother who is a Zulu, and what the elder was basically explaining is that he had a creation story that was given to him, and it was actually talking about these beings who arrived in these giant bowls, and how at that time they came with the gift of language for them, because they didn't actually even speak. They were just like using their minds, so to speak. But then these Chitahuli is what the talkers arrived, of course, and gave them the gift of language after actually splitting the atoms, because basically they sent people in one cave and sent people in another cave, and then they came out, and then they were whatever that particular gender was based on them choosing which cave to go into, if you get what I'm saying. So then you have H.P. Lovecraft, obviously, that is talking about something called the Chitahul, right? The same thing. And then this being has like a bunch of like tentacles or whatever the case may be, which could easily be manipulated through distortions in text, and it's called serpents, if you get what I'm saying. Because when you think about how it moves, it actually has to almost like move on its belly. You get what I'm saying? So like if you think about that sentinel, whenever it's traveling, all the little tentacle things go backward, and then it looks like almost like a straight line as it's transitioning from one place to another place. So then what's interesting about that is that I had an experience really not that long ago, and in a vision experience, and then I was able to see someone who looked almost identical to a character in a show called Darkest Materials, right? A show, His Darkest Materials. So there's a lady in that particular series, of course, and this one actually looked just like them. And then whenever they were dressed a certain kind of way, similar to kind of like had a Buddha kind of style to it, and then but then if we want to think about it in the sense of dress code, but then when they transition from that form into a traveling form, they actually extended out just like that sentinel does. You see what I'm saying? That's how they were transitioning, and I thought that was really, really interesting. Especially when you have the knowledge of being able to have these various different forms and these various different vehicles that you can actually consciously be aware of that's suitable for the environment that you're in. So then when I precept all this information together, and then I'm thinking about these talkers and this experience that I have, and then I precept that with the Brady Bunch and so forth and so on, because you have that sentinel that also has a version of itself that is electrical in a sense. You see what I'm saying? So then it looks like there's some form of a computer that is doing something, and it has a Brady Bunch style way of doing something to where it's providing various different characters in your experience to get people to possibly participate in a fictitious style construct that actually really doesn't exist, but it's a way of possibly trapping light. If you get what I'm trying to explain, because I'm noticing that there's a high level of interest of perversion, or what they call knowing, similar to like the sodomites when they was beating on the door. It's like, let us in so we may know him. I actually haven't heard that term being used by anyone until I've come in contact with what I'm talking about in this particular show, because they're like, oh, you don't know, or blah 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 blah, and this seems to be at the height of the reason why it wants to do what it's doing. And what I'm actually thinking is going on here, if we want to try to wrap this up, so basically what I'm presenting, of course, we're talking about, is that we have a Brady Bunch style situation that gets activated whenever you are seeking the old path, whenever you are basically not becoming a negative electron, because a negative electron actually moves forward in time. So then when you think about the direction that the civilization of deception wants to take everything in, their height of their evolution is putting the machine in the body. You get what I'm saying? So they want to have the actual body and the electronical stuff side by side, as one. But then when you are seeking the old path, you're actually trying to get to that particular position that everything was in before the so-called situation that happened with Adam that we find written about in the Bible, where it says that they saw themselves, that they were naked, and then that they tried to cover themselves up, and then they hid from the presence of who was looking for them because they were naked. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's like they saw differently after that. So then most people who are actually on a path of attainment in spirit and in truth is actually trying to get to those places, that those time frames, or that exist prior to the material aspect of everything. Because when we precept that with the story of the Zulus, then it looks like that's pretty much what happened there, of course. And then these particular beings look like they are possibly feeding in some kind of way, either off of the fact that the people have certain types of energies, or there's certain types of fluids. I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but when I think about my experience, it looks like there's beings that possibly go from one system to another system, and obviously there's people there who have abilities, if you get what I'm trying to explain. Because whenever I'm resting, it's very clear that there's something, even while I'm having this recording right now, there's so much movement that is taking place even in what I'm sitting on. And then whenever I'm resting at night, it's something similar, where it actually feels like something is literally trying to take something either out of me or something along those lines. And you have to wonder, when people actually leave the body when they're sleeping at night, could that very well be these particular beings that I'm actually talking about actually interfering with the visions and putting people in scenarios, and then them not being able to get out from a conscious perspective because they actually think what is happening is actually happening. And I'm actually precepting that with a situation that happened with me when I was in a vision experience, and I was in a room, there was someone that was there, and it didn't go right, and it looked like they pulled something out. I was trying to get out of the room, and then it felt like something happened on my back. And then, because there was like a burning sensation, of course, in the vision experience, and then I'm hearing someone coaching the experience while I'm in it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like literally trying to tell me that this happened or that happened, or I'm feeling like this and I'm feeling like that. So obviously I'm in the vision, but then I'm like also present in the room at the same time. So then like omnipresent. So then I'm able to transition out of that vision and was actually hearing the guy's voice even after coming out of that vision experience. So it looks like something has been activated, and it's used as a weapon against the people. So everybody, there's this push for this wave that and it seems like they're really pushing this on the people to try to get them to accept it. But it looks like this is actually the problem. It looks like, especially when you think about the movies like The Matrix, you think about the movies like Terminator, and you think about the one who actually came up with those writings. She actually said that these are two movies that actually go together. She mentioned how Terminator is basically the, I think, them going back in the past. And then you have the Matrix, which is basically the future, because they were trying to go in and do something to John Connor, JC. You see what I'm saying? That's the reason why those initials are there, and that's why you had the Terminator, because of the lady who was bringing forth a child, and then the machines was trying to go back in time to stop her from being able to do that. And then you fast forward, and then you have the Matrix, where you have the JC character being the one. You get what I'm saying? And then being able to bring forth the victory by fighting against these particular sentinels and these agents. You get what I'm saying? So it's very, very interesting when you hear her talk about that particular, the reason why that came out. So that's pretty much what we have. I'm not even really sure how to actually do these particular episodes, if we want to call it that. But I think it's important that we do have a way for people to actually share what their experience is. Fear is not even on the table. Do you get what I'm trying to explain? So the stuff that I'm battling against, and the ones who are actually participating in that in some kind of way, I think those are the sons of perdition that actually have to be revealed, and so forth, because there's not a lot of people who are actually dealing with or talking about what their experience is at the levels that they're at. Because most people who are actually experiencing purgatory in some kind of way have done it because they were willing to either lay down or pull something out of their wallet. Do you get what I'm saying? It's either one or the other, is what I'm basically saying, is that is the way that they've actually created their hierarchical structure, is how much can you lay down, or how much can you give, so to speak. So then when you're not participating in that, when you're not participating in lower birth, because you're seeking something for yourself. It's not that I'm doing this to get back at anybody or say, this is because of you. No, this is something that I'm choosing for me, if you get what I'm trying to explain, because I'm actually seeking out this information in spirit and in truth. But then I have this particular counterfeit spirit, or this counterfeit mind, or this computerish style thing that arrives, and it has a Brady Bunch a way about doing things, to where it will provide various different voices and various different characters for each voice that's associated with some of your cellular memories, if you get what I'm saying. So that's the reason why most people probably have a CD experience where they feel like they keep kind of like dealing with the same type of stuff, is because they're experiencing what I'm talking about just at a different level, and they haven't quite reached this level yet, but that is possibly a degree of the same thing that I'm talking about. So once you transcend all of that, that's when you come in contact with the operators, and then the operators are trying to do one thing, is to get you back into tasting death. You get what I'm saying? Because what you actually end up doing when you're reversing all the stuff that you've created in terms of when you were seeking after something that you weren't supposed to, you're actually eliminating all of those beings who got created in the process. You get what I'm saying? That's what I've noticed, is that when I'm having my vision experiences, I'm actually seeing people, I'm actually seeing all kinds of stuff actually just disappear, or like certain situations or certain things that was done in when I was in ignorance are actually like being eliminated. It's similar to going back to the beginning for yourself. You get what I'm saying? So it looks like that's when the computer style thing gets activated, because it's trying to get you to go back the other way, as opposed to the direction that you're going in, because even that didn't even exist in the beginning. So whoever makes their stand in the beginning will know the end and will not taste death, is really what we're talking about. But if I was to try to make sense of this, I would say, look, what we have going on is we have some beings that exist, and they communicate, and they thrive on being able to communicate to people and to try to control people, to try to manipulate people, and so forth and so on, to get the whatever it is that they're looking for. But then they also have a tool that's similarly operating like a Brady Bunch type of setup, to where it's actually multiple characters literally playing roles to try to keep you in a condition of cyclicity without knowing actually what's going on. And then as you're on this path, you're actually having abilities being given to you, but they're watching your head. Remember the book of Genesis when it says they will watch your head. So it's like watching your head to actually see what actually gets activated or what gets turned on, so they can actually be there. And I'm not sure if that has something to do with the perversion and so forth, because there's certain genetic codes and certain. So I know people who look a certain way today don't actually really look like that. I know that was probably them taking identities and so forth and forming bodies from that, similar to Babylon 5, where you have these particular tubes, and then you have these babies in the tubes, and they're literally through lower birth behavior perversion are figuring out a way to bypass the fact that they can't actually procreate. So then you have these types of feeding farms. That's the reason why it's important that you disavow the animal husbandry agenda, because they have actually applied that to people, and the people actually don't even know that they're on a farm. So then that's what we're really talking about, is identifying what this system is, who's participating in the system, because they need input. It's operating off of the input that you give it. So you have to actually recognize that something is there, so then you can be careful on what kind of input you are actually doing, because it's going to output something, and then it doesn't want it to be favorable to you, if you get what I'm saying. So that's the reason why it's very important, of course, that you're able to pull the board back so you can see clearly and see the whole board and make better decisions while you're on this path. So that's what we're really talking about. I'm not really sure if I'm going to even use this, but we'll see how it works. All right, so if you enjoyed this, go ahead and do this, that, and the third, and I'll see you in the next one.